Joel Embiid has become one of the more controversial figures across the entire NBA, and now sharing the floor with the league's best and world's best representing Team USA, he's become quite the topic of conversation. Colin Cowherd recently got in the mix with an over-the-top critique of the former MVP and talked a lot about some unfair criticisms that I do want to get into in this video. Now, this is not to say that Joel Embiid is perfect. There certainly are fair critiques that you can have about him as a player, a personality, how his fit is on this Team USA team, and plenty of other stuff. But what Colin Cowherd did not do was address any of those things. Now, he went on a 4-minute ramble, kind of speaking a bunch of nonsense that I am going to dive deeper in, but I do want to give the full quote that was tweeted out from NBA Central here, which was, quote, "Beyond padding his stats, Philadelphia keeps running coaches through him and teammates through him. And in the weaker Eastern Conference, he is yet to win a second-round playoff series." So we are not numb to seeing the playoff struggles or really lack of playoff results that Joel Embiid has produced for the Sixers team. We know about the second-round curse, how difficult it has been to get through, but it is unfair to fully throw that on Joel Embiid's shoulders. Now, does he have to wear some? Absolutely. But what specifically made me mad about this Colin Cowherd rant was the takeaway from 11 minutes of Olympic basketball that Nikola Jokic is in a different stratosphere of player than Joel Embiid, that they don't belong in the same realm is what Colin Cowherd kept saying. Now, this is only added to the fuel when we see takeaways tweet away, such as places like StatMuse or Legion Hoops who pick and choose what they produce, and such as this yesterday, talking about this as the center battle with Embiid with 4 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 for 5 from the field versus Jokic with 20 points, 8 assists, and 4 steals. And the reason that this is so frustrating to me is it's just simply not the same thing. That it's a completely different story when we're talking about Joel Embiid being essentially the fifth option, and even deeper than that if you want to dive into how this was played out with the Kevin Durant's off the bench, guys like Devin Booker, guys like Steph Curry, LeBron James, who still is playing at an incredibly high level. The team is loaded, and when you compare that to a guy like Nikola Jokic, who's sharing the floor with Filip Petrusev, former Sixer great, who was one of their best players yesterday, and a number of guys. They essentially had 3 NBA-level talents and a lot of guys who were fine basketball players, but are nothing compared to the likes of what this Team USA roster looks like. And that is not even considering the lack of minutes that Joel Embiid. That this was 11 minutes of action that he did get. Now, did he look good in those minutes? No, he didn't. He is absolutely struggling to adjust to the level of Team USA basketball. I honestly think it's less about the style of play and more about him figuring out how to play with all these stars alongside him. But I think it's a great thing that he's going through this process right now as we approach this Sixers season where there'll be more talent on roster than we've ever seen before. Now, to dive into the full box score yesterday from what we saw from Team USA, once again, we did see Joel Embiid with just those 4 points, 2 rebounds, just 1 block there, which honestly was a pretty important moment there. Well, a pretty impressive play, I should say. 2 for 5 from the field, 0 for 1 from 3. But Joel is necessary on this Team USA roster. I think that's getting lost in translation far too much. That is he a perfect fit? Is he a guy that has found his stride right away? Absolutely not. But when you think about the peak of a player, I would argue Joel Embiid is the only true 5 on this roster, and that's why that he will continue to get the start for this team. I am confident that his best basketball on the international level is still yet to be played. But even if it is not, do I care that strongly? No, I don't. Watching him play alongside these best players in the world, I think is cool. I think it's useful. I think it's going to help him learn these different styles and play a little less selfishly, all these type of things. But does this change how I feel about him as a basketball player? Absolutely not. And it shouldn't for anyone else as well. We know who Joel Embiid is, and this is a guy who just last season averaged 34.7 points per game, 11.0 rebounds, 5.6 assists, shot a ridiculous 52.9% from the field, 38.8% from 3, and an absurd 57.1% on corner 3-point attempts. And this is not to minimize what Nikola Jokic is, but the fact that Colin Cowherd was literally using plus-minus stats in his argument is just absurd to me. That it's a little different when you're talking about Kevin Durant leading a second unit for Team USA versus Nikola Micic leading the second unit for Serbia there. And no disrespect to these guys on Serbia. They honestly played pretty well, and I was impressed with the way that that team looked yesterday. And also shouldn't be acknowledged that Joel Embiid struggling against another guy who's a certified top 5 talent in the league shouldn't be that much of a critique. And did he really struggle as badly as made out? I don't think that is the case. And I do appreciate that Joel's worth on this team is noted. This is not a Jason Tatum situation in which he's not even receiving a second of burn here. That is a slap of face. That is a wake-up call. That is a showing of a talent that I don't want to say is not deserving on roster, but is a little bit more dispensable than people would like to acknowledge. That is not the case with Joel Embiid. And believe me, if you buckle up and wait, it will be worth it. As Sixers fans, we've seen year in and year out how it takes Joel a little bit to get his legs under him and to find his stride. I'm confident that when the moment matters most, there's going to be some key Joel Embiid moments that are absolutely crucial to this Team USA team. Now, as far as the Nikola Jokic conversation, we understand the rivalry here. They are the two best centers in the league. They're two of the top 5, probably top 3 players in the world. And there's a clear, rivalry because of this. That is still to say that the discourse and the conversations have been far too toxic than they should be. And I know they come from a lot of different places. I get the critiques of Joel ducking Jokic, how he has not played in Denver in several years at this point. I understand that there's plenty to go off here. But the reality is, both these guys are excellent basketball players and should be celebrated as such. And to talk about what Jokic brings to the table, this is a guy who's incredibly productive. We're talking about just last season, which was his 3rd MVP, 26.4 points per game, 12.4 rebounds, 9.0 assists, shot 58.3% from the field, which is absurd there. 35.9% from 3, just 25% from the corner. But what he is just a guy that can generate offense. He is an offensive hub in a way that you can't quite say about Joel Embiid. But he's also, Joel Embiid is a level of scorer and a level of defender that you can't make the case that Jokic is either. They're different players. They're both incredibly talented, and they don't need to be compared in the way that they consistently are. They're both excellent at basketball in their own unique ways. They both found strides to master the game in the way that they see fit and using their skills to their advantage. There's never going to be a world where Joel Embiid is going to climb to the level of playmaker where Nikola Jokic is, and really very few NBA players can. But there's also never going to be a world in which Nikola Jokic can climb to the level of isolation scorer or defender that Joel Embiid can be. So both these guys are excellent, and let's stop making this a 1-versus-1 type thing. And the bottom line is celebrate the talents that we do have. Now, I spoke a little bit about Joel Embiid playing in the Olympics, and I get there's a lot of pushbacks. The biggest reason for concern, of course, being that injury there. Now, I'm in favor of it. And the reason that I say that is the worst case for Joel Embiid, and we've seen this on several different occasions, is when he is out of shape. That is when the injury risk is at its worst. Now, I'm not saying he looks like he's in perfect condition right now, because he certainly does not. But I will say that entering the Sixers season next year, I think the best way to stay in shape or look like the best version of yourself from the opening game is to play as much basketball as possible. But I don't think Joel Embiid is going to be a guy running wind sprints or getting on the treadmill for an extended period of time. I'm not even saying that as a critique. That I understand with the injury risks and concerns, you got to be careful for how you train yourself as well. But playing basketball in a high-intensity, high-level environment alongside the world's best can only help him from a fitness perspective. And from a stylistic perspective, it's been really cool to see the things that he's doing off ball. Stuff like playing with Steph Curry to set screens, a little bit of two-man action there, or even beyond that, where they're just moving off ball together. That's stuff that I think is going to translate with a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who I do expect to continue to take strides forward last year and had a heck of a season last year as a first-time All-Star, averaging 25.9 points per game, 6.2 assists, 3.7 rebounds, 45% from the field, 37.3% from 3, and 61% on corner threes. Absurd stuff there. And that's not even considering the new addition that has been brought to this team in Paul George, who just last season, 22.6 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shot 41.3% from 3 and 45.7% from the corner. Those are guys that I think are going to continue to improve and play off Joel Embiid excellently, and I do think that the foundation that's being laid with Team USA can translate here in Philadelphia with playing alongside that duo there. And speaking of that duo, Tyrese Maxey did sit down with Paul George on his podcast recently to talk a little bit about expectations for Philadelphia, everything else about the free agent process. And there was a really cool question that was asked to Tyrese, and it was asked about kind of like his mindset with Paul George coming here and how things came together. And he had a really cool quote telling the story that it really was Joel Embiid leading the charge, how he had sat down at the start of free agency, had his list of players that he wanted, and Paul George was sitting there right there at the top. And Tyrese Maxey said that whatever you want, big fella, I got you, with the exact quote being, quote, "I'm going to ride with you until the wheels fall off," and I think that's a great idea when speaking about his desire to team up with Paul George. And don't let it get lost how much credit Tyrese Maxey has for making this incredibly talented roster, one that I do think is the best ever in the Joel Embiid era. And if we do not see some postseason success this season, then we can start having some of these conversations that people are so anxious to get into. But shout out to Tyrese Maxey for being selfless, for allowing to delay the contract, and thankfully, he's been paid what he's worth. He's going to be with the organization for a long time, and it all worked out in a happily ever after fashion. But it was very cool to see those chopping it up, and I cannot wait to see them sharing the floor with the big fella Joel Embiid. I do truly believe that we are going to be in for the best season of Sixers basketball in quite some time, but definitely in my lifetime. I think there's the greatest chance at a championship that I've ever felt about a Sixers team, and it all starts with Joel Embiid laying the groundwork with Team USA and learning how to play with others in a way that we have not seen from him to this point. So we will see how things shake out from here. But I do think it's a little premature, some of the victory laps or stretches, the victory laps that people are trying to run. That is directed directly at Colin Cowherd, and he is not in his own lane for that. There are plenty of other voices and faces saying it with their chest in a moment that I just say, wait a little bit, you might be eating those words. And if I know anything about Joel Embiid, is that he will let you hear about it when that is the case. So we'll see how things play out from here, but appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning into this video. I did not want to play the full Colin Cowherd round for starters because it was long, and second because I don't want to, promote that any more than it already is the case. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're dropping your comments on the topic below, dropping a like on this video, and subscribing to the channel if you have not yet. And we'll be talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.